Welcome to the Incubate podcast, where we feature ordinary people doing extraordinary
Great. So I'm
things.
a bit of a tea fanatic, and today, as we're going to have the conversation, we're going to be enjoying amazing tea called Resurrection Bush Tea from Zimbabwe. This tea is legendary. It has it's got tons of stories around it. They say it's spiritual. They say it's healthy. They say it's all sorts of things. What I know is that today we're going to be having amazing conversations and also having great tea as well. My name is Charlton. Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Incubate podcast, where we're telling the Eswatini story online. Today I have an amazing guest, and this gentleman, when he speaks, I'm like, wow, I could listen to this guy all day, every day. He's an amazing man. I have Karaki today, and we'll hear a little bit more about him and the work that he's been doing and his amazing insights into where Africa should be going in general and all of that. So we're going to have this discussion, but before we do that, please allow me just to pour you a cup of resurrection tea. In Zimbabwe, in Shona, it's called Nufandi Chimoka. So literally it talks about raising something that has died. So it's literally a resurrection tea. I'm hoping this is just gonna resurrect amazing inspiration as we have the discussions we're gonna be having today. Thank you so much, Al, for joining, and welcome to the Incubate podcast.
Thank you very much.
I am so excited to be having you, Al, and I wanted us just to begin, where I want us to begin, to our viewers. Al was in a Jackie Chan movie in 1998 called Who Am I? If anybody's watched, if you remember Jackie Chan, Who am I? Who am I? So Al was in that particular movie, and I really just want to get started there, Al.
Okay.
What was the inspiration? What got you into that movie, and what was your experience working with Jackie Chan?
Everything happened by accident. I think that in my initial part of the career, I was cooking at a Japanese restaurant in Durban. And this big guy walks in, extra steak and everything, and pretty foul move. So when I asked him, how do you want your steak? He said, but you're not Japanese. I said, yes, I am. I'm from Canada. So anyway, here. So what can I do for your steak? And then he told me what it is, and so I cooked it. And then he kept looking at me during the course of the meal and said, please come to the other hotel, Marine Parade in Durban, in the morning. So I didn't know who he was, went into the hotel, 300-400 people mingling around. It's 6 o'clock in the morning. And so he grabs me, puts me in a room with 13-14 other people, and they're all just staring at me. And I thought, what? So calls me back out, and he says, okay, here's the story. I'm Aaron Norris. I am Chuck Norris's brother. Oh, I'm like, whoa. I thought, we were filming in the Philippines, and the coup happened, so all the film companies, we moved out. But instead of going back to the United States, we stopped in South Africa, and we found the perfect place that looks like Vietnam. So I went to the airport last night. I hired 9 actors. Only 8 got off the plane. So he says to the rest, where is Don? Don is a Hawaiian actor. Don got sick in New York and is there. He's not coming. So that's it. So Aaron went ballistic. So that's why he was in such a grumpy mood. But now he says, I don't care what you're being paid or whatever else. You are now going to be the 9th guy. You are part of a Vietnam U.S. squad to protect this village. And that's it. No more, no questions, no nothing. You are there. So from 7 in the morning till 6 at night, I'm out in the field shooting, protecting the village from all these enemies.
Wow.
Rolling on tanks and everything else. And the whole South African film industry came to see because it was the first big production. And there we are. So we had Michael Dudikoff, we had Chuck and Aaron, everybody come. And they're asking, what do you do and everything and all this stuff. And I said, well, I live here. Well, so this is the time when South Africa was going through its apartheid era and sanctions were the order of the day. So what they did and what affected me was for the next 7 or 8 years, I became what they call a red herring. Put an Oriental in the movie and throw the crowd off, the viewers off, and it worked. None of the movies that I was in got boycotted, and because people in the U.S. would think, no, there's no Orientals in Africa. I mean, he's an Oriental. This is somewhere else. On that basis, and having acted in a whole bunch of movies, Jackie Chan came to South Africa to film Who Am I? And so they called me. I was kind of the only registered Oriental actor. We went in there, did the test, and all of a sudden I'm now with him. So I spent a total of 4 weeks with Jackie Chan. 1 week in Joburg at the hospital, where we're blowing up hospitals and things like that. And then another 3 weeks down in the place way deep in the Northern Cape in South Africa. And it was an amazing time. I mean, what most people don't know is he's illiterate. He cannot read. So when all of us actors said, where's the script? Yeah. Benny, the director, says, I'm sorry, guys, there's no script. Jackie can't read. So, okay, so we go. We pick a place, we make a few things, and we improvise, we shoot, and then we move on to the next one. That's been the story. And he's an incredibly humble guy. I mean, we had interviews, right? And we are staying at the top part of the hotel. We have aircon and TV and all this stuff. He's staying in a big apartment downstairs that has nothing. But when the media came, we all had to join, and we go in there. And he had endless lines of rope, clotheslines. He had about 200 socks, athletic white socks. He washed them, and he hung them up to dry. He had a rock thing that he built in the middle of the living room so he could make a fire and cook congee, which is kind of this soupy stuff. And, just things like that. He's the first one to grab the equipment and move from one location to another.
Wow.
And he's like that. So I got injured. I won't go into, it's a long story, but I got injured. And so when you're injured, the benefit is, for the rest of my shoot, I have lunch with Jackie every day.
Wow.
So we had lunch, we talked about this and that and everything else. And what an incredible experience.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That is totally amazing. I mean, where does it start and where does it even end? You have excelled in the culinary arts. You have excelled as an actor and as a technologist. Please tell us a little bit more about yourself and your history of yours. Would definitely love to hear a little bit more.
I was born in Canada, spent most of my time in Vancouver. And my innovation, I think, started when I was helping organize some what they call freestyle skiing. So freestyle skiing, one of the disciplines is they have a 3-meter jump. The idea is to come down the hill as fast as you can, hit the jump, go up into the air, and hopefully land on your feet after somersaults and rest of all this kind of stuff. I was very lucky. Everything that I did, I managed to land on my feet most of the time. But my colleagues started skiing when they were like 8 and 9. I didn't start till I was 18, so it was very late. So I realized I didn't have the depth. So I switched from being a competitor to actually putting on the shows. So if you think of, we have a festival here called BUSHFIRE. We have 35,000 people type of thing. So my job was to go around the world and host snow festivals with 100,000 people over the weekend. And they would have these competitions and that type of thing. So that was my first taste of large-scale event organization. So I had to really have everything sorted, the logistics, the sound, the safety, crowd control, all that type of stuff. Then in Vancouver, we had what we call an Expo 86, big World's Festival. And this was late 1900 type things. And so what happened is I put together what we now know as Airbnb. I organized 400 homes, organized the menus, inspected the rooms, and got Vancouver ready for all these people that were supposed to come, which they did, but they got stopped in the border post in the U.S. U.S. and Canada, the border post is 20 minutes away from Vancouver. They all stopped there. So the entrepreneur side kicked in. I went and leased 30 big buses, And every day we had this convoy of buses ferrying the U.S. people up from Bellingham into Vancouver, putting them into these 400 houses. For 3 days, the host would feed them, make sure the house was fine. We would transport them to the ferry. We ran at 75% occupancy, the highest that anybody ever did at that type of thing. From there, I went to Spain, because that's when the next one was. I had 4 years to get ready for this. I got to the border. They said, we know who you are. You cannot come in the country because you're going to Karaki tourism. I get all this stuff. So I said, no. In fact, if you think I actually helped your tourism, I helped bring people within the places. But anyway, they didn't have any part of it. So I left, came down to South Africa because I heard that from media that all hell was. And I got here and I was 2 blocks away when this Magoo bomb went off. It was crazy. So I stayed because when I got here in Africa, there was no Sunday shopping. There was no cell phones. There was no McDonald's. There was none of those things that I was used to. I just sat there and said, how does this work? Opportunity. If I stick around long enough, I can do all this stuff. And sure enough, it all started to come through. So that was my journey. I started a free ad newspaper, which now is the largest newspaper in Africa. It's gone all over. It's big in South Africa. From there, I launched my first Off the Kitchen Table that launched the largest educational technology project in Africa, where I ended up teaching, for lack of a better word, 8 million children, mostly in rural areas. And we would use radio. It's called interactive radio. We had music, sounds. We tied that in with workbooks. Incredibly successful. To the point where the donors, especially USAID, was just true. We became the flagship project for education for USAID. Hillary Clinton became one of the patrons for that project. So it went very successful. From there, I got a call from President's office, President Mbeki at that time, and the Deputy Minister of Finance. We talked about all the things that I did. They asked me, you must be good because you're doing projects, but we can't seem to find out where you steal the money. I said, well, I don't do that, sorry. On and on we talked, and then she said, we're going to second you. What does that mean? I've never been seconded, She says, no, whatever it is that you're doing, you stop tomorrow morning, you work for the government, you work in finance ministry, and you're going to be the chief information officer for the South African government and the lead project manager, and that's it. So next day I start. 90-day contract turned into 6 years. I ended up being the special advisor for 9 different departments: telecommunications, housing, water, education, etc. My job is to problem solve. And that's where it all started in Africa. It was problem solving. And as people will tell you, Africa has no shortage of problems. So they all said, you've got a lifetime job here. You can do whatever you want. And that's how it's been. So all I've been doing is sorting out problems with governments, with business, with community. And now it's just getting extreme large-scale stuff. So that's how it all started anyway.
That is incredible. And what has been your greatest attraction to Africa, though? What has kept you in Africa this long? You said it yourself, we do not have a shortage of problems here. You could as well just have moved back to Canada and just gone back home and all that. But it's been so many years.
Yeah, it's now for 20 years now. Yeah.
What has been your greatest attraction? What do you find attractive on the continent? Is there something that us here in Africa are not seeing that others?
Well, I think that is, for me, I like change. Many people, the majority of people don't like change. They're comfortable in their own ways and whatever, but I find that whenever there's change happening, then there is opportunity. Canada, for example, doesn't have much change. The systems that are there are set. Everything works. You get passports in 45 minutes, that kind of thing. But here, boy, it's 3 months sometimes to get all that. So there's obviously inefficiencies, and that's why I base everything on is I look for inefficiencies and then I try to make it better.
Yeah.
So Africa does have inefficiencies. Things work, but they're just very slow. Yeah. So all I'm doing is changing it, accelerating it, making it better. I mean, it's awful in the sense where people here have to take all different kinds of transport to get a piece of paper, to get a passport or a driver's license or a grant or a social grant, things like that. I mean, that's really tough. So thus we are getting involved in connecting. We're connecting all the schools, 838 schools in Eswatini by satellite, so that they can access the internet, they can communicate with each other. And it's all those types of things. So we're carrying that program throughout Africa because, technology is coming on to South Africa Africa very quickly. And all of a sudden we're going to be wired. In a decade, we will be the largest country in the world. We will surpass China. We have the biggest numbers of youth. So when you combine youth and that amount of people, and when you scale using technology, it's massive. And so this is the future. Africa is the future. That's what appeals to me most, is I'm part of creating the future for this continent.
That is brilliant. I'm just thinking, as we are looking especially at the post-COVID, scenario, life after COVID within Africa itself, and all these things that are happening globally now with the war between Russia and Ukraine and all the instabilities. Look at what's happening in global economies right now. Many countries are on the verge of recessions and all of that. Where does Africa stand in all of this? And what do you think are the important things that Africa needs to be looking at in view of all these calamities going on around the world? As we're going forward as Africa, what are the critical things that you think should be of priority to governments, and what needs to be happening?
Sure. It's very important to look at that. I mean, one needs to have a visionary stance on where all this. You need to think about the future, and having said all those things, and having the kind of, I wouldn't say brief, but severe experience with COVID. What COVID has done, and I was, I'm obviously not happy with the death and everything that came with it, but what it has done is expose the vulnerabilities of our system here in Africa. It shows you that the supply chain is very weak. Maybe it just doesn't even exist, like in agriculture, for example. So we now at least know where we are, but we have very little, and we need to build all of that. So the biggest thing that seems to be hitting now is food scarcity. We have 841 million today people in the world who are starving. In Africa, it's 247 million who are starving. And in Eswatini alone, we have 332,000, which is still almost a third of the population. Food scarcity is everywhere. And so if I think, and all of my effort is motivated by having my son, because I don't want to leave him with this problem that we've caused. They'll have to come up with solutions, and especially with food. I've done the water one. I now have created and innovated equipment that will produce water anywhere in the world, lots of it. So on that one, I can sleep at night. I've solved that issue. We can now have water, so that's done. But when it comes to food, well, that kind of goes along with water. Water's first in the hierarchy, food is second. And so in that instance, and with what you mentioned, agriculture in Africa, to me, has to be it is the key for feeding not only Africa, but the world. The people from Europe and the US have been calling like crazy, asking the same thing about food. I said, well, maybe there's a perception that we are the breadbasket of the world, but we're not. We only supply 2% of the world's food, and that's despicable. Africa needs to reset. It needs to become that breadbasket because we have the land. We have millions of small-scale farmers, which unfortunately have not been given the resources that they need to do that. So what do we have? We have a land that is incredibly chemically killed. I mean, the amount of GMO and chemicals in the land is terrible. We can't grow anymore. We're having to put more fertilizer and more fertilizer. So if anybody said that this was a kind of a mad scheme from the chemical, it is. It is. So we need to go back. We need to change all of that. And so the projects that I'm working on, we address climate change. My understanding from the donors and from the institutions is the concept we have called global growth is now the largest and the only nature-based solution that actually makes sense. We have the ability to remove billions of tons of CO2 from the air. We can do it in time according to 2030 and 2050. But in the meantime, the reset part comes in because we've estimated 25 million jobs. We can create low-cost medicine. We can make affordable building material. We have plastic. We're able to create bioplastic, which means that all these plastic bottles and stuff that you see polluting the oceans, we can now change that so that these plastic objects will biodegrade after 3 months. So there's that issue of plastic things, for example, like we can create housing material, which is incredibly cheap. And the moment that you build with what they call Hempcrete, it starts to sequester carbon. So besides saving the world from the carbon issue, which is mankind's own creation, and I must say the North, we have not contributed. Africa has contributed very little to emissions. Transport maybe, but it's not that big. Agriculture, yes, that is a significant. But now we're suffering the most. We are starving the most. We have the less of everything because of climate change. We're dealing with weather. And that's the issue. Weather changes everything. It tells you where and when you can harvest and where or when you can grow food. So if we don't sort out the climate change, and our instability of food is in jeopardy, and we can all maybe just starve to death.
Because I know you're very passionate when we talking about things like industrial hemp, hemp itself, hemp-related products. And what's your assessment of the uptake of production of industrial hemp, the use of hemp in Africa? Where's the potential? Which countries are doing well? Is there economic scope for doing this? Because I know a couple of African governments seem to be opening up, but it really feels like it's a bit late. What's been going on? Where's been the pushback, and where are the opportunities?
The hemp has been around for over a century, and the mistake that governments made was to combine industrial hemp with marijuana, which is part of the cannabis family. But you and I and 5,000 other people, we could sit in this beautiful place and we could smoke hemp every day. We would never get high because there's not enough of the THC in hemp. Hemp is fiber, marijuana is buds. And it's not to say we don't want the buds, but the use that we need for 25,000 different products is in hemp.
Right.
And so everybody's had a slow start. Today, there's 1.5 million acres spread out over 46 countries in the world for producing hemp. China is being the leader. Canada, US, and France are second, third, and fourth. And then there's a whole bunch of other countries. Africa has 12. But they're just starting. And they're all rushing to cannabis instead of hemp. But hemp is where the real action is, where the value-added products is, that type of thing. So in all of my presentations, which are growing rather rapidly, I've had to spend a minute in terms of myth busting. So I have an audience of 400 people, and I'll say, we stop, repeat after me. Industrial hemp is not marijuana.
Yeah.
Say it, people, like that. And so the whole thing is, and so I'm able to do that. When it comes to investors and government, it's been not as difficult. They understand it because I said, I need you to go to your search engines and search and find out what I've discovered is the most versatile product in the world. It sequesters carbon. It grows much faster than trees. In fact, the harvest time's 120 days. So that means that I can sequester carbon much quicker than anything else. But it's the byproducts. Where am I going to create all these jobs? First, you got to plant it. Then you've got to harvest it. Then you got to manufacture it and change it into whatever. So in our process, we will be getting a lot of land. There's 3 countries that have said, here, we can have all this land. We will then seed for the first 2 years. From there, we will move into organic stock, which means we can create unlimited organic fertilizer. So to then go throughout Africa and spread organic fertilizer and regenerate the soil gives us a solid base to grow. So I'm thinking ground zero, day one, this ground is polluted. We need to fix the soil first. We need to get the water systems. Besides industrial hemp, we also have a crop called halophytes. Halophytes is a species, and we have about 400 out of 10,000 species. Halophytes are crops that grow in seawater. And the investors, when they first heard about this, were saying, but how does that relate? And I said, well, I have now access to as much free seawater as ever, because 96% of the world's water is seawater. I don't have to pay for it. I can go and I can pump it out of the sea and put it in the desert, which we're planning to do, and use it. And now I can plant in the desert using seawater. So what does that mean in terms of economical costs? I don't pay for the seawater and I don't pay for the desert. They've said, there's the desert. Help us do something because it's creeping. It's called desert creep. As we're losing an acre, I think a second, to the desert creep. So that whole area in the top of Africa, the Horn of Africa, is getting bigger, but we're driving people away. So we've established that we want to build this great green wall, which will stop the advance of the desert, and at the same time provide employment and food, build communities again, and just revitalize. We need to resurrect this as what you have shown here.
Yeah.
So the combination of industrial hemp, seed-growing products, and that type of thing will make us a success.
That's amazing. I just want to draw you back a little bit to speak about issues related to food security. You believe a lot in food sovereignty. You've, what are innovations? You sit with you in 5 minutes. You talk about food, 3 of those 5 minutes, and then you can talk about all the other innovations. Agri-tech. I know you're very passionate also about agri-tech, food systems in general. What is the connection between production of food in Africa and technology? Where do these come together? Where do you see the potential? And what have been some of the exciting things that have been going on your own projects or within the network that you're working with? Yeah.
Early this year, I had the honor to address the World Food Program put on by the United Nations, a planning session, and explain how the use of technology can help scale and address food scarcity. So I did that and overwhelmed by responses and all positive. So in the end, as a result of that, we have come up with 3 or 4 programs, which we call part of the African Growing Revolution. Now, the first one is school feeding schemes in Africa, some in Europe, and mostly the United States have collapsed. So what we have come up with is the use of what we call aquaponics and hydroponics. So we have designed a system based on a non-electricity rural school, because that's where most of the schools, they're in our rural areas, they have no electricity. So we had to build this system for that. So we have designed, they're responsible for collecting, for example, 1,000 2-liter plastic bottles, because we use that to create the transport for the water. And aquaponics and hydroponics is a soilless system, which means that basically we put plants in the water, we feed the water with nutrients and vitamins as you would with your body, and we run that water through the plants on a continual basis. What happens? The plants grow. And because we use no soil, there's no pesticide. So these are truly organic, healthy food. Lettuce, cucumbers, tomatoes, strawberries, herbs, anything we grow. One of the critical things on that one is that we only use 10% of the water that a traditional farm would use. Traditional farm, the water irrigates those plants, but then it goes into the ground. If it comes out, that's an if, there's a good chance that it's contaminated. So that water is technically useless. It doesn't help us anymore. In aquaponics system, none of the water escapes. We capture it in tanks and we recycle it like this, right? So we use the same water. We just inject it with organic nutrients. And that's hydroponics. So what we've done, we've designed kits, and every school that comes to us now, we show them how it works. We disassemble the system, and they put it back together so we know that they are comfortable with it. Then we turn around and we give them the entire kit of how to start. Comes with buckets and nutrients and everything they need to start. They now, we started already, they go back to their schools, they implement that, and we're hoping that the kind of entrepreneurs in that community will say, oh no, but if I expand this, we can feed the community, just not just the school kids, but the community. We're starting to see a little bit of that now, the expansion. They're asking for more kits. And so our second phase would be the introduction of move from hydroponics to aquaponics, which would include fish, because the water where the fish swim in, if you take that water and put it on plants, the plants accelerate. Yeah. And interestingly enough, the water from the plants goes back to the fish and they accelerate. Well, so now we're able to introduce fish into vegetables. Africa needs that kind of nutrient, yeah. And now we do that, taken one step further. Chickens are very big. We have discovered to take the manure from chickens, we mix that and distill that into the water with the fish, and everybody's happy. So we've actually created a circular economy, in a sense, where a complete ecosystem, chickens, vegetables, and fish all thrive under the system. Wow. And we can produce that. So, and again, the water is low. So the first thing is a worldwide, Africa-wide injection of that technology, basic technology, into all the schools. The second one is geared to be more immediate. All the large cities in Africa, and this is also most of the world, are experiencing hunger and starvation in the city level. Yeah. To get food to the city, there's logistical issues, there's conflict issues, there's all kinds of things. Yeah. And so, again, the countries call and say, please help us. We need an idea. So we came up with, which is not a new idea, but it's been perfected, is vertical food farms. Now, hydroponics, we would put horizontally. You put them on tables. But with vertical food farms, you take these tubes and you go up to the ceiling. In other words, what we're doing is making use of this area up here. Yeah. We can create 100 to 150 times more food by going up rather than sideways. Same system.
In limited space?
Limited space.
Wow. Taking advantage of all this space that would not been used.
Anyway.
And so this saves even in terms of the land area that is used for their production, because there's also a lot of conflict really around land use.
Yes.
And as you expand land for food versus non-food products and things like that. So yeah, that's incredible. Yeah.
So we're able to produce a lot of food in a small space. There is a place in Japan which is just a little bit bigger than this house. Yeah, produces 40,000 heads of lettuce a day.
Wow.
2 robots all night pick and clean and pluck and change and all this stuff. Yeah. And the next day there's 40,000 heads of lettuce ready for sale. People ask about cost. Well, normally if you're in a supermarket type situation, you have to realize that food has to come from somewhere, usually a farm somewhere remote. So the fuel we pay, and when we buy the food, we pay for the fuel to move from farm to market.
Yeah.
Then we have to package it. We have to make sure that it's, got packaging around it. In our case, with vertical food farms, we are producing in your area, right where you live. You could walk to us, right? So that means we don't have to pay that whatever transport cost. Yeah, we're making the food that you want right there. You come with your plastic bag or your box and say, I need fish, I need carrots, I need this, that, and everything else. And we run around and pick it off the floor wherever it is. And because there's 7-story buildings that we do this. So we go on the right floor, we get your fish, we get your strawberries, we get all the stuff we need, tomatoes. Okay, so with the vertical food farms, we have that huge capacity, but the same thing applies. We don't have to spend a lot of time and effort on water. Everything is automated. And like I say, the cost, we can produce that food for the same cost that your supermarket buys it for.
Wow.
So obviously they're not too happy about this, but I said, I'm sorry, but we have all these starving people. We cannot, for the sake of profit for you. I mean, there's other ways you can make profit. But when it comes to food and food scarcity, we have starving people, millions of people. So we need to do that. So we have a medium-term solution for the starting at the schools, which will spread. We have short-term situations, which will feed people in the city. And in one particular country, they're looking at 500 of these vertical food farms at 3 cities, and it's one country. It's enormous. And it'll be the largest in the world. And we're very excited about that, just to be able to supply. And, there's Singapore has got 18 of these vertical food farms already because they import everything Singapore has, food, water, all this stuff, they imported.
Wow.
So it's just tiny little island. In the United States, every major city has 4 or 5 vertical food gardens. Netherlands, and you see them now on the tops of buildings. So Africa, actually, last year at least, didn't have one.
Wow.
Yet we have all these starving people. So, we've kind of put that together as an opportunity. Mm-hmm. And we are now very busy putting together systems for people from homes to the offices. We have a couple of corporate offices who, in Johannesburg, who are planning to put a huge vertical food farm in their lobby.
Wow.
And so what happens is that the people who work at this company are able to buy fresh vegetables every day from the wall at work and take it home for their families. I mean, Joe,
that's
saving water, all that kind of stuff. So that opportunity is really fantastic.
Yeah.
The third component is this one has caused a lot of issues, and as I explain, you'll see why. We've created these things called clean climate teams. So clean climate teams are a small group of project managers, artificial intelligence. We're starting to hire artificial intelligence people, integrators, environments. We put them in what they call the war room. So we're saying in every war room, which is one in every country and one in every major city in the world, there is this group of environmental specialists. Their first job is to go out and record who's doing what. There are going to be some companies who are trying very hard in environmental reform, and they're putting in systems, smoke, filtering on smokestacks and that type of thing. There are other ones who are trying, but they're not got the right technology. Then there's ones at the bottom, or a different separate group, which are also known as greenwashers. They are saying that they're going to do something, but when you actually go and see them, they're not. And they're usually the worst polluters. And I'm not trying to name them all, but it's a consequence. We have to indicate to everybody what is the progress in your country, in your city, of environmental reform. So we started that now. It's a massive job, but it's a high-profile job. At the same time, we will then call for solutions. I deal with 160 different engineering companies around the world, and these guys, in their basement, in their backyards, have come up with some really fascinating stuff, but they can't get it to market. So this type of exercise allows us to say, here's a problem in Manchester, England, or Houston, United States, or Johannesburg. We need the solution to fix that. And so we do that call to all these engineers, and the solutions will come. I mean, I always say nerds will rule the world. In this case, they will. They will say the word. And so that will then start to get the reform going in a proper way. And then the third one is the hemp project, which is a global project. It is now considered the world's largest. So it's big. It's quite exciting. Yeah, the partnerships that we're creating now, for example, with African youth, are just fantastic. Fantastic. So we're looking forward to that.
You know, I was then going to be getting into talking a little bit about innovation in Africa, young Africans. There's a whole conversation going on for us around the demographic bulge. You spoke a little bit about this, just to say, is this a demographic burden? Is it a demographic curse? Because you've got so much unemployment on the continent. You've got so much skill and talent, especially talent, untapped talent. But the opportunities are just not there. And what are your views really around African entrepreneurship, tapping into all these emerging opportunities you're speaking about, where tech is meeting with solving problems that we have, like the food question you were talking about, and also the climate crisis that we're currently all experiencing at the moment. Where do you place African youth in all of this, and what you think the future holds for them?
Let me start with what I think is the issue. Because if we understand where the block is, then maybe things will happen. And it's a question that comes up every time. As a foreigner, I guess, or whatever, but we're working in Africa, what is the biggest problem? Analog leaders. We have analog thinking leaders who are not letting go. The digital world is coming. They're running, they're scared, they're closing things down, they're shutting access off. That is our biggest problem. However, the good side of all that is tech is coming, and there's nothing they can do to stop that. Within 6 months, most of Africa will be connected through satellites and air fiber. There's a whole bunch of technology coming to first connect everybody. Yeah. And then from there, we will need content. We will need content as to what and how and things that need to be fixed and whatever, and start directing. So the opportunities will be laid out. Lots of jobs, lots of training and skills transfer will happen. So tech will be the enabler. It allows us to get to identify those youth. It helps us to identify what kind of skills that they would need and impart those skills. So that it's quite of a neat package, but you have to understand that it's the analog generation of leaders. And I must say, there is 2 or 3 African leaders which I have the greatest respect for, because they are starting to understand that this is how this works, and they're allowing the tech to happen, and that's a good start. But we need to do more. So the kind of projects that we're doing at least is vital. And we've approached the youth and said, I've got 25 million jobs. Are you ready? And they're all gung-ho. And they said, okay, where do we start? And I said, well, skills training. It's not going to happen overnight. And you can't take a shortcut. If I'm going to learn how to run certain things, you must learn how to run certain things. You can't just read it from a book and think that it's all going to happen. So there's a commitment to learning, but then there's a commitment to a future. And on that basis, we're finding that there's a lot of youth who are keen and who have never had that opportunity. So we're talking about the largest skills transfer, I think, in the world here. But we have to do that. I mean, in less than a decade, Africa will be the largest country in the world. We'll surpass China. We'll surpass India. We have a youth organization. If you look in Asia's lots of older people. If there's no youth coming up, so their foundation is shaky. Ours is strong. We just need to hone it and carve it and skill it up, and we will be the top country. We will be. Yeah, and it goes back to what you asked me before. What excites me about Africa, the fact that Africa will be the top country in the world. Well, that's what excites them.
That's really amazing. One of the challenges that I particularly have seen is just the difficulties of older generations who have got amazing experiences and skills, but they're just not transferring their skills to younger generations. And I know you've been involved a bit in trying to get groups of younger people in Africa to do some sort of mentorship and skills transfer. And how has that been going? And what would be your message to your compatriots who have had all these global experiences, and there are young people out there who are waiting to embrace the learning and also the skills transfer? Yeah.
I mean, I've been nominated for the top, what they call ecosystem builder in Africa for 2022, top mentor for entrepreneurs, and top business advisor, because I have brought kind of innovation to the entrepreneur sector. I'm currently have almost 400 entrepreneurs that I mentor through things like WhatsApp and remotely. It's growing very fast. And entrepreneurs are really going to be the lifeblood of Africa. They bring innovation. However, what I'm encountering is people think, they watch and they hear all these stories of huge wealth and that type of thing, and they think that it just happened very easily. They haven't associated the hard work and the long hours and everything else that it takes to do that. So we have to not go back to ground zero, but we have to spread that ethos of entrepreneurship. Because with that comes innovation, with that understanding of finance, with all of that kind of stuff. To help with that, I'm in the process now of going to school. I'm registered to become a high-level venture capitalist. I have 3 different funds who have approached and said, okay, you're good on your projects and everything, but we want to give you all this money, and you can help the development of Africa. Fantastic, right? So I'm able to now really put the money where the mouth is.
Yeah.
So I have access to literally unlimited amounts of funding coming up. I still have to go through all the process, but should that be successful, I will be able to really give a boost to these youngsters, and I fully intend to do that. And I think similar to you, we want to introduce robotics and coding and project management and all those skills. So we're in the process of moving from the old industrial curriculum for schools, which taught the kids to be workers, to transform them into thinkers and innovators. That's where it'll take time, but that's where the big change, the shift will come, is by changing our curriculum to thinkers. And the progress on that, I've now worked with other groups, and we've managed to put aquaponics in the curriculum in 2 African countries. Wow. So that is a wonderful signal to say, yes, we as the education department recognize that agriculture and growing your own food is an essential part of surviving. So now it's going to be in the curriculum. So that wave of youth will be well equipped. At least we know they'll be able to feed themselves. That's a great start. If we continue that, then we're good. So things like robotic and coding and applications and tech, all that stuff we will need to. So we'll do that on a mass scale. So I'm very hopeful with that, combined with the money and the infrastructure. And really, I'm asking the analog leaders to please share, kind of get out of the way, share, but this is coming and there's not much they can do to slow it down. So the youth must be patient, but they must be diligent. I mean, I will help anybody that tries, but if you don't try, I'm not interested. You need to have that commitment.
I know you work in quite a couple of African countries, but at some point you decided you wanted to come and also stay in Eswatini. As we're wrapping up on this, I'm just thinking, what attracts you also to this country? What do you like about Eswatini? And yeah.
Well, first and foremost, I find that the electricity system here is fantastic. I mean, when the power does go out, 45 minutes later or less, it's back on.
And that's significant from an African perspective.
You can't do anything without that, right?
Yeah.
In South Africa and other countries, but at this point, South Africa, if the power goes out, you won't see it for the next 4 days.
Yeah.
How can you work like that?
Yeah.
Right. The crime level is, I wouldn't say non-existent here, but it is less, which gives me comfort to be able to raise my son in a peaceful environment without having to worry about crime.
Thank you so much, Alf. This has been incredible. One parting shot to African leaders as we look at a revolution that is unstoppable in terms of technology, as we look at confronting, our post-COVID situations, as we look at all the troubles going on around the world. What would be your parting shot to African leaders on what they need to do to be able to take Africa forward?
Open your mind. You must open your mind and share. Power is in the people. And if you try to hold back and hold that market, it will not end up nice.
It's been incredible. Now, thank you so very much. Thank you for coming in and sharing a cup of the reservation tea as well. I'm sure you really liked it.
Yeah.
I'm a serious collector, and I have a whole library of teas, and I'm growing this, to just captivate teas from all over Africa and stuff like that. If our viewers are watching, please, I'll give you my number. If you've got interesting tea from your country, please get in touch with me. I would love to have it. Thank you so much, Al. It's been incredible. And thank you so much for coming through to the Incubate podcast.
Very much.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Right. That went well. Excellent.